Hey, what's up, online community? And thanks for stopping by and checking out another segment of Straight No Chaser, where we talk sports for the fans all the time with the fans. Now, with the return of the NBA, basketball is a buzz, not just because of the professional level, but it's got things a buzz on the amateur level as well. And I've got some great people here to talk basketball with us this afternoon. Now, you know that I'm based here in Chicago in the Midwest, but basketball just isn't played in the Midwest. It's not just played on the East Coast in New York and New Jersey, but also all over the country. And this group of guys, they are here from the state of Florida to talk basketball, what they've done with basketball, what they're planning to do, and how basketball has impacted them and made a way for them. So before we get into our show and I introduce our guests, as we do as customary here, Straight No Chaser, let's raise our glasses, a shot or drink of your favorite libation, and let's get ready to jump into it. Straight No Chaser.
Salud.
Salud, gentlemen. So joining me tonight on tonight's segment, I've got Manny Bloom, who's a coach, former player, and a father. Very deep into the basketball scene in Florida, and he's agreed to be on our part of our conversation and our chat. So I'd like to welcome him. Also, we've got Matt Baricelli. Matt Baricelli is a former basketball player. He's coaching now, and also he's got a very exciting podcast called it Keeping It a Hundo. And I'm really excited to hear about some of the things that he's doing because he's run the gamut. He's gone from player to coach, and now he's looking at expanding beyond that into the broadcast piece. And last but not least, we've got a very good friend of mine that I've reached out to here. As you can see, he's representing the U. He's got the U on his chest. Good guy, good brother, London Wood. He helps put together some of the best organized basketball games in the South Florida area. He competes at a high level himself. You would never know his age and his skill level by looking at him, but the man is a beast out there. Got to give it up. So London Woods, thank you for joining us. So before we get started, many of the fans here to watch the show are based in the Midwest. Many of them are in Chicago, Iowa, Minneapolis, Indianapolis, the Midwestern areas. Manny, can you talk a little bit about, kind of yourself, where you come from a basketball perspective, where you're at, and kind of some of the things that you're doing?
Absolutely. So I was born out west, but quickly moved to the Northeast.
Okay.
I was raised in Pennsylvania. I was raised on Northeast basketball, right outside of Philadelphia. I learned from most of my basketball from 5-Star Basketball Camp, which had a base in Chicago as well at one point. And that's where I got my taste of basketball, and that's where I learned everything. I've learned from some of the best coaches in the country. And I took that as a player into college, but decided college basketball was not going to be the path for me. I played my first year up outside of Pittsburgh. Okay. And then I decided, at 19, I wanted to go into coaching, and I moved to Florida, and I ended up in Boca Raton, where I became the head coach at Boca Raton High School at 22 years old while I was still in college. So, which is not common. And it was a 3,500 kid public school, and I was 22 years old. So when I became the head coach there, it was kind of like throwing me in the fire. But I thought I was a little more prepared than maybe some kids, because I did grow up in that 5-star mentality. And I started sitting down with 70, 75-year-old retired coaches at that age of 19 and 20 for hours on end, and just learning the game, and really just grew to love it. And I've been coaching ever since. I've been a varsity coach for 20 years. As you said, I'm a father. So I did step down from my head coaching position this past spring to just solely to spend more time with my 2 kids. And I ventured into cross country, basketball, and track and field to coach middle school so that I could see my kids more. So it was a great year. I plan on doing that at least one more year, and then I'm sure I'll find my way back into the high school game, which I love so much.
Well, see, Manny, I think you touched on something, and I think it's really interesting. The fact that you were 19 years old when you decided, and you kind of had this level of self-awareness that playing basketball wasn't your path, and that coaching was going to be your pathway to stay involved with the game. And that's a little bit unusual, especially for a player who hasn't hit their prime. Prime basketball playing years are mid-20s and such. So was there a particular situation that occurred, or was there an inspiration that helped guide you in that direction?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. First of all, I'm still hoping to hit my prime. I'm playing with London. I'm hoping we match up. I'm hoping I can hit my prime here in the next year or two. But
Okay.
but no, honestly, I went to camp with some great players. I'm from the same area. Kobe Bryant's about 35 minutes, and Richard Hamilton. They were in the same league.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
I lived within 45 minutes of some really good players. I never played with Kobe or against him, but I did play with and against Richard Hamilton. And I spent a week at camp with Richard Hamilton on his team in 5-star, and it was a great experience for me. But I think it opened my eyes. I was 16 going on 17, and I'm like, if that's a level, I don't even know where that level is at that point. But if that's a level, I know how far I am from that level, whether it be physically, skill wise, abilities. And luckily I was on his team, and he got me recruited because I got to stand there and be wide open while everybody tried to guard him. But that kind of opened my eyes. And when I got to college, I've always been a very realistic person. That's the way I was raised. And sometimes that might hurt an individual to be so realistic. But I really just looked at college as a waste of time, me playing. I was like, am I really doing this? What am I doing this for when I can go start my career? And I went and worked in the restaurant business and made cash to get through college, but the whole time training to be a basketball coach. And as soon as it opened, I jumped on it, and the rest of the story just kind of made itself. But that was kind of what opened my eyes. I was just always very realistic and I've tried to do that with my players too, because, to think you're going to the NBA, you don't want to kill hopes and dreams, but most people are not going to the NBA. That's the reality of the whole thing. So I think that's what opened my eyes and got me on that path.
And that's something we're going to come back to, as far as, what has been your message, or how have you been connected with players and helping them realize, finding that balance between their goals and their dreams, but also the realistic expectations based on where they're at, and how to manage that. So it's interesting that you brought that up. So Matt, tell me a little bit about your basketball path.
I grew up outside of Boston, and I was a basketball junkie from early on in my life. And I was like the best player in my town, like a big fish in a small pond. And then I started playing AAU in 6th grade. And that's when you start, venturing outside of your neighborhood, and you start seeing, like Manny said, the separation of like, oh, I thought I was really good. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people out there that are just at another level. I stuck with it for years and played through high school, and I was getting recruited a little bit, but I was getting recruited more for football, and had some great offers for football, had some chances to go to the Ivy League, and I chose to go to a school where I could play both basketball and football.
Okay.
I went to Union College in upstate New York, a Division III school, and like Manny said, you kind of realize that this isn't going to be my life. And I was one of those guys. I was getting in trouble, and I was focused on things off the basketball court, and I got thrown out of school. And I ended up transferring to the University of Miami, and that kind of saved my life, to be honest. I was in a bad place, and going to Miami, I didn't play sports at Miami. I played intramurals and pickup, but actually the pickup ball at Miami in the Wellness Center, which London's very familiar with, that was like the best form of therapy you could ever ask for. Every connection I ever made, every job I've ever had, every good person relationship I've ever made in Miami was on the court at the Wellness Center, including London. Manny was met through London. Everybody I've ever met. I got a job working in real estate. It was from a guy that owned a real estate company that was playing pickup ball with us at the Wellness Center at University of Miami. Basketball has opened so many doors for me, and it wasn't even because I was a star in, some big college or anything like that.
Okay.
I could just say, growing up in Boston, I grew up in the Celtics and the Lakers and the Big East. I love basketball, and the pickup game that London has pretty much set up for us over the past decade or so has been, again, therapy. The guys that we have, from NBA guys to guys like us who don't have, resumes that match up to Jamal Mashburn or Tim Hardaway or Ray Allen, but we play with them and we play against them and we hold our own. So London, we owe for that because he organizes it every week. It's a special invite only. If you're on the list, you get invited, and if not, then and I have friends that say, "Oh, you think you're better than us? You play in that special game." You know what I mean? But we're blessed to have that. I miss it. That's one of the things that's been bothering me during the quarantine.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Matt, because I travel to the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area probably, well, before this, probably every 3 or 4 months, and I'm in contact with London. And usually I'm there for maybe 3 or 4 days, and London's always trying to get me to come out to the runs. And I'm trying to balance my time. It's like, okay, I know if I go to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, I'm probably going to be out enjoying what the state has to offer, what the city has to offer, and I'm probably going to look like garbage if I show up to the runs. And you don't want to be that one guy from Chicago who somebody vouches for you. Like you said, they put you on a list and like, oh man, that dude is trash. Who brought him out here? Is that how they do it in Chicago? Is that the best they have to offer? So I'm glad to hear you guys talk about it because I was a little skeptical, but now that I'm here and he's told me that Ray Allen has come and joined you guys, Jamal Mashburn, Burning. You guys have a good list. And to your point, if you're a ball player, you want to play with a certain level of competition, guys you're familiar with, and just keep the integrity of the open runs and things like that together. So I definitely understand the commitment to the group and to the people that London likes to bring in. Absolutely. So I'm going to go here on Straight No Chaser. But London, I will be at one of your open runs the next time I am in Fort Lauderdale, Miami. There we go. We've got it documented.
All right. It's documented now.
It's documented. So London, tell our audience a little bit about your basketball path and what is it that you do and what you've been doing.
Well, basketball has been a sport that I've enjoyed all my life. I'm closing in on 60 years old. I have 2 sons. One is 33 now. And we've been playing the game together since, I started teaching him when he was about 3. When he got old enough, about 11, 12 years old, we started playing together. I started having him compete or play in the gym that I was at that time, which was a long time ago. But it was a gym, and all you guys that play pickup basketball understand that every gym you go to has its own code. It has its own rules. The rules are never the same from one place to the other. What I've had the luxury of being able to do is be in one spot long enough to get into a position where I can help lead that spot. And, I'm the one that usually ends up, kind of managing it and making sure players are playing by the rules that whatever the rules are that we have set. So I used to bring Little London there to that particular gym, and we played for years. We used to play in these things called Gus Mackers, which was outdoor 3-on-3 tournaments. I know they have them up north. I don't think they don't have them down here in Florida. But so part of my love for the game was transferred to him. He has since really took to it, pretty quickly and has loved it and continues to love the game and continues to play. My goal was to help him be a better player than I ever could have been. And I think I accomplished that goal. But, we both love the sport. We've always loved it. I plan on playing as long as I can, as long as my body will allow me to run up and down the court. I don't see myself stopping because I enjoy it too much. But that's kind of my story. I came from, I played a little small high school, didn't play college ball, didn't go to college out of high school, went to work and came from a family that my dad didn't graduate high school. My mom only graduated high school. College was not something that was talked about in my family. It was, get a job, pay your bills, that kind of thing. So my path to doing what I do now is a bit circuitous, but I'm happy where I'm at now in life.
So let me give you guys a little interesting tidbit on how I first met London. The first time I met London, we were at Shaq's pro camp up in Boca Raton. This had to be about 2 or 3 years ago. And I was playing pickup up here in Chicago with a group of guys about 10 days before I was supposed to come down there, and I pulled a hamstring. Now, if you've ever had a pulled hamstring, that's at least a 3-week recovery. And I pulled it about 10 days out. So I get down there, and they're having the scrimmage games and drills and assessments and such. And I'm guarding London, and I made the mistake, you never want to show weakness on the court. never want to give your opponent anything to attack. I tried to guard him. I made a move, or he made a move, and I grabbed my hamstring and said, "Oh, he's got a bad hamstring. Oh, he's got a bad. Oh, get the old man. Get the old man." Come to find out, London's almost 10 years older than me, and he's talking about get the old man. I'm like, you know what? You don't get your such and such blankety blank filth flower filth. But I knew at that point, A, he was a dog on the court. He was a good guy, but he was a dog on the court. He wasn't going to back down because I played some aggressive defense. And B, he just, you know, we struck up conversation, and it just made for a good relationship and rapport that we continue to build on even to this day. So, you know, that was my first interaction with London.
Let me kind of speak to that just a little bit too. You know, my wife oftentimes complains, and she'll say, "Why are all your friends so young?" You know, because all of my friends, I don't have any friends that are my age.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one or two, but I really don't have friends that are my age. All my friends are considerably younger than me, just like all of you guys. And what I've communicated to her on more than one occasion is that on the basketball court, I get to see what kind of guy you are. I get to see what kind of person you are. And I can make an assessment after seeing you on the court, whether you're the kind of guy that I want to befriend or not. There's guys I've run across on the basketball court. I wouldn't invite them in my house for a glass of water.
Yeah.
And there's other guys that, you know, they could have the keys to my house. You know, I trust them that much, like this whole group here that we're dealing with. So, you know, just in kind of to double on or jump on what Matt was saying, all the friends that I have, for the most part, all of my really good friends have come from the basketball court. I've gotten so many opportunities because of the basketball court. And, you know, a couple of years ago, my wife was we were considering making a move to another university. And, you know, we went up there and looked around and met people and had all these meetings and things. And one evening we were in the hotel after spending a day with meeting all these people. And I said to her, you know, honey, I don't think that I really want to start my whole social circle. I don't want to have to redevelop that. I just don't think I want to leave because, you know, I'm at that point, I was probably, I don't know, 55, 56 years old. I said, you know, it's taken me a long time to get with this group of guys that I'm with now. I don't think that I'd be able to find that anywhere else. I mean, this group is very unique. We got people from all walks of life. We have, as Maddie said, and Manny, we got guys from former pros like Ray Allen, Jamal Mashburn, all the way down to guys like me who only played high school ball 40 years ago, you know, and we have a good mix. Everybody understands that we're there to play. We're all competitive. Everybody wants to win. There's not one guy on the court that's happy with losing. But we also understand that this is a chance to, one, enjoy a game that we all really love, two, to get some exercise, and three, to continue to build camaraderie. And we're not here to hurt one another. You know, I'm not going to undercut a guy to prevent him from making a game-winning layup. I mean, we just don't do those kinds of things. And I think that's what makes what we have down here so special. I've been a part of a lot of runs, and you know, the fact that we control this, we control who comes, I think really, really makes the difference here. We don't allow, you know, we've had situations where people have wandered in the gym because they heard about it, and they're like, okay, yeah, who's got next? And we're like, well, who did you come here with? Well, I didn't come here with anybody. I just, you know, somebody told me that you guys were playing, so I came down to play. Maybe my boy came down to play. I'm like, it don't work that way. You know?
Look, sorry about that, London. I remember that one incident.
I wasn't calling you out, Maddie.
A couple friends of mine showed up, a couple stragglers, but
you know, it's happened. It's happened more than once. So it was not just that situation, but it's, you know, we control it. And the other thing is, you know, we hold everybody responsible. So if Manny brings somebody, or if Maddie brings somebody, and that somebody turns out to be a knucklehead, which I don't think either of them would do that. But if that somebody turns out to be a knucklehead, then it's on Maddie to deal with it. You know, I don't have to deal with it. Matt knows that, look, you know, dude, you need to control yourself or you got to leave. You know, so I think that it's kind of like, it's almost like an Amazon type situation where we self-police, or eBay, I'm sorry, not Amazon, eBay situation where we self-police. And it's been going on, I think, for probably 10 years or maybe a little more than that.
So one of the things that I'm hearing consistently from the group is the level of, first of all, the brotherhood, the camaraderie, the level of respect that basketball has afforded you both within this group, but then also beyond that group in your circle, your networking partners and such. I do want to ask Matt a question, because Matt, you have a podcast, and your podcast, can you talk a little bit about your podcast and how you've been able to utilize the networking opportunities from playing basketball to help build that?
Yeah, it's been great. It's not a basketball podcast, but I've probably had more basketball guests than anything on it. And I mean, I could sit and talk about basketball all day. So it works for me. The network, the network we created at our pickup game, I honestly don't really want to like bother a lot of those guys.
Okay.
Because it's like their sanctuary. And Mashburn's offered to be on the podcast. I haven't really bothered him about it. I've never asked Ray Allen. I'd rather, I don't know. I just feel like I don't want to bother those guys. So as far as working the network, I use my own network. Guys I've met along the way, or
Lot of static, Matty.
All right, we lost you, Matt. We're going to come back to you, Matt. I know you're working through it. We're going to come back to you, Matt.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, you got you. Yep, we got you.
Okay. Where'd you lose me?
We lost you at not wanting to bother people, but using your ability to network to build it.
Yeah, pretty much. My first guest was a homeless guy I know that lives in my neighborhood.
We're losing you.
I'm good.
We're losing you again, Matty.
What do you recommend?
I think we
just try to go without. Yeah, try to go without the headphones. See if that's any better. And just pull it out of the side and then just talk. Use the speaker, or use the microphone on the device. Yeah. Try that.
How do I sound?
Oh, perfect.
Come a little closer to it, but you sound better.
Yeah.
How about now?
Great.
Okay. So my first guest was a homeless guy that I know in my neighborhood. I've had drug addicts on that used to play quarterback in the NFL. I've had heavyweight champ on. Just had some really interesting conversations.
Okay. So now that we've kind of gotten some of the background and leg work out of the way, now let's get into the meat of the conversation. Where you guys are from, I know while you're located in the Miami, South Florida area, many of you are not originally from there. The area where you're from, where were the hottest playgrounds to play? And who was the person that gave you work on the playground? Who gave you that business? Let's start with London.
Well,
who gave you that business?
This is not a question that I really have a good answer for.
You got that much work done to you?
Yeah, I got a lot of work. I didn't come from an area that was a basketball hotbed. I mean, there was guys that were pretty good, but most of the guys I went to high school with and guys that I played with when I was growing up, none of them went really past high school. They didn't play. My parents moved us out of Detroit when I was young, and so we were just in a bad spot. There just wasn't much of it. I mean, so I can't necessarily go back to point out anybody, at least way back when, that used to give me some work. Now, I have run into people that, over the course of my life and all the times I've spent on the court, I've run into some people that always cause me problems.
So who are some of those guys? It doesn't, I kind of talked about, growing up, your developmental stages, but who are the guys that gave you some work? Looks like Manny Fresh is over there.
Yeah, Manny Fresh is one of
them work.
Manny Fresh, Manny gives me work. He gives me work all the time as it is. Now he's 30 pounds lighter. I'm probably going to have to get my son there. I don't think I'm going to want to mess with him.
Let me say some words in London's defense. He's the oldest guy there by far.
Okay.
Manny and I are the same age. Where me and Manny are probably. Are we in the middle of the age spectrum?
Probably just past the middle, probably like just on the top end of the middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And London is by far the oldest guy. So the fact that he's holding his own out there with guys our age and stuff, it's a credit to his actually it's his genetics, because the guy has a six pack and he's like 70 years old or some shit.
So it's funny that you said that, because one of the people that's watching, I call him my big brother. He's been on the show several times. Francois Wright, aka Big Frenchie. He made a comment earlier that London does not look like he's close to 60. So there's something about those genetics, those genes.
I got lucky.
I didn't realize London was as old as he was until he told me. You know, I just thought he was just kind of this baby face guy with a deep voice, like he was an R&B jazz singer or something. You know, out there trying to play basketball. The next thing I know, he's like, "Oh, we got a hamstring. We got a hamstring. Go get him." I'm like, "All right, okay." So, Matt, you talked about the pickup games and the runs. You played at Union City. You're originally from the East Coast area. I'm sure you come across a lot of ball players, or even just had some really good basketball games. Name somebody who gave you some work. This is also a show straight no chase. We allow therapy as well. So get this therapeutic session out of your system too.
Okay, so these are guys that played at a high level of college ball. These aren't like NBA legends or anything, but there were guys in my area. We would go into, different cities and different pickup games and different courts or whatnot. Guy named Scooney Penn.
Yep.
Scooney was a problem. One of the fastest guys on a basketball court you'll ever see at any level. Had a great career overseas, but he played for my rival high school. We were 1 year apart. Impossible staying in front of that guy. We'd play pickup ball. Shannon Crooks, a kid who ended up at St. John's and UMass. I remember one time I went up, I had a breakaway, went to lay it in. I thought I saw the ball go through the hoop. He had taken it off the square and thrown it 20 rows deep.
Oh, man.
One of those type of things. I grew up in a suburb, mostly white guys, and you go into the city and play with these city guys, and it's, we could talk about race with the race stuff going on in this country. When you're a white dude going into the black neighborhoods to play ball, it's a sign of respect when they want to pick you up. And sometimes you're the only white guy, or, if there's a choice and they're picking teams and they see a white guy and a black guy, they're taking the black guy. That's how it works in basketball. That's how it works. And then they see you play, and then you can earn your way, meritocracy type system where you can earn your way and get yourself some playing time. But guys like that, we grew up idolizing Chris Herron. Chris Herron was a white guy.
Mm-hmm. Very familiar with
it. That we looked at him as like, wow, we might be able to do this, because he's a 6'2" white guy. He's not extremely athletic or extremely tall or any of those things. He's something that we could see ourselves in. So I would read he had a book in high school about him called Fall River Dreams.
Okay.
I would read that on the way to my high school games. There were kids on my team. We would pass it around the bus and everyone would read that book. There was a guy in my town named Casey Arena, 6-foot point guard, ended up going to University of Maine, all-time leading scorer at University of Maine. Just an amazing basketball player. Just seeing these guys grow up and they look like you. He was an Italian guy like me, 6 feet tall like me, just regular sized dude, but he was flashy. That was what I grew up with, that type of stuff.
So to your point, I'm actually friends with Chris Herron on social media. Last time I messaged him was about 1.5 years ago, and we were just talking about some things. I know he had a documentary that had come out. It was on ESPN, but he's a really good down-to-earth guy. Straightforward, no BS, but he's a good person.
Yeah, we spoke about having him on the podcast, but he's so busy.
I know he's on my list of people to reach out to as far as my connections. But I will say this: my big brother Francois Wright, we call him Big Frenchie. He will tell you to this day that Kenny Anderson is his all-time favorite point guard, and Chris Herron is right there. Chris Herron was real. And this is with all the things that he had going on outside of basketball. Imagine, you can only imagine how good he would have been, had he been able to focus completely on it and things like that. But shout out to the Big Frenchman and Chris Herron.
It showed that he had a different purpose. His path is to help people and to, he's setting up these treatment centers and helping people get clean. I think he's doing so much more. He put himself on a platform to get exposure and have a voice because of his basketball ability, but his ability to connect and to touch people and to improve people's life has made him more impact, more purpose.
Absolutely. Manny, how about you?
So, I moved around a lot as a kid. And obviously most of the basketball that I played at an older age was in the Reading area. We played a summer league in the West Reading Park, which was a big park, Antietam Park. I don't know if I can name anybody specific from those times. Obviously camp was where I faced, the best players. And like I said, playing with Richard Hamilton was probably one of the best experiences. But now with the kind of runs that we had, I mean, there's no one I could have played that I have played in the last 20 years that would be better. I mean, obviously with the guys we've mentioned, I was with a similar group in Boca of guys. We played with, Chris Carter and Randy Moss, and you got to play with extreme athletes. So like nobody growing up that would stand out name wise, but probably what grew me the most as a player. My parents worked for a company called Vision Quest, which is a company for juvenile delinquent kids. So the kids are actually sentenced by the court. And they had a facility with a gym and everything. And so my school bus would drop me off there, and I would go to the gym. And starting at about 11, 12 years old, that's who I played with. So you're talking about kids in a juvenile detention center. Like Maddie said, I'm one of the only white kids in the gym, and I'm young, and they're 17, 18, and they're rough. There's no fouls, no blood, no foul. And it teaches you to be tough. It teaches you how to stay on the court. It taught me a lot, along with then developing into my days at 5-star and everything. But it was probably what gave me that first experience of what everyone would call street ball, or going in there and trying to play 21 on a court with like 26 dudes, and I'm up to their waist. You want to talk about just trying to get after it. There was a few times I think my dad had to step in and say, "Are you okay?" Because I'm good. That's just how you learn how to get after it. So, but as far as the toughest players to match up with, I can guard London sometimes, which is good. But when I get switched on a screen and I got to guard Ray, or when Tim Hardaway would play with us, or Ja Morant right before where he gets drafted, he came and played with us one morning. And what are you going to do? It's like you're not in awe because we're used to it, but you have to be like, wow, like what is that level? And it's a whole nother thing, but it's fun. And I think, like Maddie said, he doesn't bother people to get on his podcast and all that, because that's not what we're about. It's about forming relationships, and those guys knowing they can walk in our gym and talk to us and feel good about it, and no one's asking for pictures and autographs, and when they do, the few people that have, we usually talk to them and say, that's not what we're about. So, but that's my little history as far as playing against some of the best.
So I've told the story, and I actually shared this on the last segment. And it's interesting how you may play against guys at different levels of competition, but there's always somebody out there that has your number. And sometimes it could be a person that's not even a name. We played against pros here in Chicago. I played at different controlled gyms, controlled settings. Back in the day, I played at Hoopston Gym with guys. Even now, there's still locations where guys will call you up and say, hey, we got these guys. So like Bobby Simmons and guys like that will be at these runs. But I tell this story about somebody having your number, and that's when the reality check kind of kicks in. Like, oh man, I thought I was here, but really this guy let me know he's here and I'm more so down here. So there was a guy named Anthony Bonner who played for the New York Knicks. He's a power forward. So he's from St. Louis, and he would hold a pro-am tournament. So I'm playing in the Anthony Bonner League, and there was a local guy. And actually he's a really, really good player, just kind of a fringe NBA player, but a really, really good player named Erwin Claggett. And he was a point guard.
The NCAA in rebounding his senior year.
Who, AB?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a beast. And he would put this pro-am tournament together. So everybody from the St. Louis and the the southwestern part of Illinois, East St. Louis, Madison, Brooklyn, those areas would play in his summer pro tournament. And at the time I was going to SIU Edwardsville. And long story short, I was always a good defensive player and a point guard who was able to feed people, hit people in the right spots on an offense. But I wasn't a dynamic offensive player. But I was very good at defense. And I was just good enough on offense to maybe hold somebody accountable. So this one game, we're playing against this team, and everybody's got like that local team of street ball legends or playground ball legends that, didn't either didn't play at a high level or something happened with them in school, or for whatever reason didn't pan out basketball wise. So he ran up against that team, and we're playing against this team, and there was a guy named Erwin Claggett, and they've been building my defense versus his offense. Now I'm 5'11" and 3/4, which is 6 feet in the streets. So I'm 6 feet tall, and Clag is 5'10", and he wasn't there for the first half. We're up by like 6 points. Right before the opening tip-off, Clag comes in through the door, and I'll never forget. He comes in. He's got Adidas running shoes on. He drops his backpack. Somebody gives him a jersey. I don't even know if he put the jersey fully on. He goes to the scorer's table. It was number 10. He wore number 10. And he goes to the scorer's table right before the inbound of the second half. He goes, Erwin Claggett, number 10, checking in. Does 3 toe touches in Adidas running shoes and gives me like 24, 26 points in the second half. Now you're talking about, now mind you, this is where everybody's there for these games. This is the basketball hotbed of that area. I was never involved in so many 1-4 and high ball screen pick and roll sets in my life. That was the longest half I played in basketball. So we've all got those stories where, somebody's giving us the business, or you just like, man, I thought it was, I'm gonna quote Omar from The Wire. See, I wanted to be one way, but see, it's the other way.
Yes, sir.
So we've all got those stories out there. It doesn't always have to be a name. It could just be somebody who's really good.
I got one for you. So I went to the park to shoot around one day in Dorchester in Boston. I was probably 25, 26 years old at the time. Just shooting around at the park on one end. There's a kid on the other end shooting around. And I wasn't paying much attention to him, but I did notice he only had one arm. And he was shooting. And I was like, oh, he looks all right for having one arm. He can shoot a little bit. So after I shoot around for a while, he says, hey, you want to play one-on-one? This is my court. So I see you shooting around on my hoop. He's like, let's get it in. And I was like, I didn't come there. I wasn't planning on playing one-on-one, but hey, if someone challenged me, then let's go.
Right.
So he beats me in the first game. Like, I'm like, this guy got one arm, and he was giving me work because it was so unorthodox what he was doing.
Yeah.
Like he's shooting, jump shots from like a sidearm pitcher. And then these quick flip shots where I didn't know he was going to release the ball. So I said, damn, in the second game, I got to step it up. So I beat him the next 2, but I had to work, like really work. And if you haven't noticed, I have 2 arms. So, this guy really made me put in work, and like that, I was impressed.
Well, so that's interesting that you said that, because again, sometimes you don't know kind of how to play that scenario and how to go about guarding someone like that. I've got a story about a person with one arm as well. So we're at a gym. Yeah, we're at a gym in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. One of the things that was a blessing for me and fortunate for me was because we moved so frequently, I was able to be exposed to a lot of different players and a lot of different styles of game. So that helped me grow as a basketball player, but then also as an individual. But there was a guy who had one arm. He was about 6'2", and he was missing his right arm from the elbow down. So the game is kind of close. He's hit a couple shots. I wasn't taking him as serious as I should have. But then, game is on the line, and he's got one arm, and I go to reach, and he does a rack dribble and comes around and gets the ball. And I'll be damned if that son of a gun didn't try and dunk it. Now he missed it, but I'd be damned if he didn't try and dunk my ass. I was like, oh hell no, yeah.
Damn, I've been playing this game for 50 years, and I ain't never run into a one-arm basketball player.
Not on the court. I've seen him, but I haven't ever played with him.
Yeah, this guy, he was legit. He tried to dunk my ass on the finish because I reached and he left me. And of course, he don't play help defense and pick up ball. So they just went, hey, we want to see what he's gonna do. And he just missed the back of the iron. Yeah, so I would have never been able to lay that one down. So we've all got those stories. Let me ask you, when you're looking at the transition, I know Manny earlier you talked about transitioning from a player to a coach. Was there a person or individual that inspired you or that you patterned your coaching style after? Was there an influence that helped guide that decision once you were able to make that decision to come to that realization?
So when I first started playing, because I actually didn't start playing until middle of fifth grade, which nowadays is old. That's old. You got to be six to start playing. But I started playing in fifth grade, and we had biddy ball, and one of my coaches, Scott Walters, in Franklin, Pennsylvania, a little town. He definitely got me on that path of wanting to understand the game, and he was great. And I actually ended up naming my youth program pretty much the same thing, Bobcat Biddy Ball in Boca. So that was my first influence, but I would say my biggest two coaching influences that would be maybe with some name recognition. Rick Barnes went to high school with my mom, and I've always followed him, and I used to work his camp in Texas when he was out there. And he was definitely a mentor in that aspect. But there was another guy by the name of Marv Kessler. Some people don't know him. He's passed away now, but he was one of the first five guys that would start up a 5-star. And I used to, when I was 19, 20 years old, I would pick him up from his camp. He was sleeping half the day, and he would just do a little lecture, and I would work my butt off and run the camp, and then he'd collect all the money. And then I would go with him, take him to the Jewish deli, and his wife would leave him for the summer because she didn't want to deal with him. And I would take him home, and we'd talk basketball and eat for 5-6 hours every night. And we do that for 5-6 weeks. And we did that for about 3 years. So I learned a lot. He wrote a book on defense, and I learned a lot from him and no one probably ever really knew it because he was already out of the 5-star game, and he was older and retired. So, but he was in Boca, and we just happened to meet up, and he was probably my biggest knowledge influencer of the game and in the whole.
Gotcha. That's an interesting story. I'm glad you were able to share that. Matt, how about you? I know you transitioned from playing basketball on a competitive level. I know you still play at a recreational level and pick up in some competitive runs. But right now you're doing podcasts. Can you talk a little bit about your podcast and kind of what was your inspiration for doing that?
I listened to so many podcasts, and I was like, I think I could do this. I know a lot of people, and I like to have conversations, and I'm open, and I like to just dive in and pick people's brains. And the conversations I'll have on, say, an airplane or sitting after we play ball at the gym, just that type of stuff. Like there's a lot of gold in those conversations. You can gain a lot of knowledge and different perspectives on life from different types of people who come from different backgrounds. I've always wanted to spend time with people that come from different backgrounds than myself, different ethnicities, different cultures, different cities, different countries, everything, just because that's how you learn, that's part of learning. So my podcast is essentially the same type of stuff, just picking people's brains from different walks of life and trying to give people different perspectives on life.
And for our viewers and fans that just joined us, because we've been having people join us, can you share the name of your podcast with them?
Yeah, it's called Keeping It a Hundo. It's you can find it on Apple, you can find it on Spotify, any of the podcast platforms.
Great, thanks for sharing. So London, how about you? I know you talked about just the competitive level that you played in high school. I know you're still active, but the main thing is what you're doing now is you're organizing or helping to organize these really competitive and exclusive runs down in Miami. Kind of what was your inspiration for doing that? This has been going on 10 years now. You've had some names come through. You want to talk a little bit about the names that have been coming through and then your inspiration in doing so?
Yeah, for me, I think this was just kind of a carryover from the way things have happened in my life since I've been an adult anyway. This is not the first situation in which I was kind of like, I don't like to use the term running, but I'll just say organizing and kind of, the one that people would look to for the rules and that kind of thing. And I remember when I came here, and I met Matt at the Wellness Center, playing at the Wellness Center. There were some guys that used to play up there, Brandon Opalaby and some other guys. Quite often there'd be several of the players would come up there, and it'd be on Sunday at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I remember I came up there. This was shortly after I moved down here, and I just kind of stumbled upon the game. I went up there and happened to see all these guys up there playing, and I was like, man, these guys are good. You know, I could tell that these guys were, I didn't know any of them at the time, but I could tell these guys were good. And when I first watched the game, I thought, and these guys are, you know, these guys are a little bit too fast for me. They're just, you know, too young and too fast. But, you know, eventually I was like, well, I got nothing to lose. I might as well just jump out there too and get my feet wet. And Brandon O'Polaby at the time, he plays with us now, but at the time, Brandon O'Polaby used to kind of run that one. You know, he used to, you know, tell people what the teams were going to be and that kind of thing. And I told him early on, I said, someday I'm going to be running, I'm going to take this run over. I said, and I can tell you that because that's what happens over time. And sure enough, it evolved over time, and it ends up that, you know, now I'm doing this thing that we do. Brandon is a part of it. And I said, I told you one day you're going to be, you know, playing with my group. I'm not going to be playing with you. So that's been kind of the pattern that I've had. But this group has been unique. This has been, as Maddie said, I think this has been probably 10 years, maybe even a little bit more than that. I've not been a part of a group that's been like this for this amount of time. And it's been, I won't even say it's been challenging because I enjoy it. I look forward to it. You know, I've met some great people throughout this thing, but it all started from one of the former coaches here at University of Miami, Mike Huger. At the time, I was living on campus. My wife and I were living on campus. So he would call me sometimes at, you know, noon or so, and at the time I was going to school at the time, and he'd say, hey, you know, we're going to play, and do you want to play, and can you come play? Because he's always trying to get a game together, get some guys to play. Finally, he says to me one day, he's like, you know, I'd like to try to get a game. We started, I think, early on Saturday morning. He said, I'd like to get a game from like 8 to 10 on Saturday mornings, because, you know, guys that have families then can go back home and be with their kids and be with their families, and it doesn't really interfere with people's lives so much. Do you know some guys? I know some guys. Let's pull it together. And so that was what started it all.
Gotcha.
So I reached out to the guys I knew. He reached out to some of the guys he knew, and that was the beginning of it for us.
Right.
Man, keep in mind, we were playing at like 5 a.m. sometimes. We were playing at 5 a.m., 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And also we left out. We had a lot of NFL guys who have played along the years too.
Yeah.
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 A lot of big name guys.
Yeah, we've had Jason Taylor play with us. Julius Peppers.
Oh wow! Okay.
John Vilma.
John Vilma.
EJ Manuel.
Yep, EJ Manuel. Who else have we had? We've had
Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yep. As far as NBA players, Tim Hardaway Jr.
Carlos Arroyo, Raja Bell.
Ray Allen, Raja Bell, Derek Bowers, Carlos Arroyo. And we even had some big-time college players, too, like the guy that was playing for Michigan State, who's now
Miles. Miles. Last name was Miles.
Yeah, Miles.
He's in the NBA.
Bridges.
Yeah,
Miles Bridges.
Miles Bridges.
Oh wow, Miles Bridges has been. So you guys have had a lot of names come through. You got your consistent core group, but it's kind of like they will reach out or they'll get wind of, and you guys have had some names, both professional basketball players, professional football players, but just professional athletes in general have been able to come through, in addition to people that play for the love of the game.
Yep. Yep.
A lot of not all of them, a portion of them, they have kids at the school that I teach at. That's part of the connection. Also, when they find out, you know, that there's a professional athlete, when they find out there's something that's organized, safe, you know, it's not going to be a distraction. Ours is so quiet. We were playing at UM for the longest time and still play there sometimes, but now we play mostly at Gulliver, which is where I'm at. And, you know, it's a nice kind of getaway for them. They don't have to worry about anything. And I think that we have a good reputation, you know, for the game and for the atmosphere. So I think anybody who's in our area, whether they live here or are just visiting, they're going to find out about it, and they're going to want to be part of it, because there's not, like London said, there's not a lot of these groups out there. I've been fortunate to be part of 2 of them in my life, and they were both great.
Absolutely. Well, I want to ask you one follow-up question to that before we segue into our kind of closing discussion topic, and that is just real quick. We're going to go around. I'll start with Manny. I'll go to London, and I'll finish up with Matt. Who was the best pro football player, basketball-wise, that came and ran with you guys?
So, I mean, when I was in Boca, it was definitely Chris Carter. I mean, he could really, really play. Like he could, and he was so strong and could handle the ball. But since we've been at Gulliver more recently, they said Julius Peppers. I don't know that I've ever seen a guy that big, and he's big. And I don't think I've ever seen a guy that big move that well, have such a soft touch, and really just like know how to play. I mean, he was really, really good.
Wow. Yeah, and people don't remember that Julius Peppers played power forward in North Carolina.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about a professional athlete who actually has a skill set to boot with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A bunch of basketball junkies. We know this stuff.
Yeah, there you go. Not the average person. So, Maddie, how about you? Who would you say was the best football player that you saw at the Run?
This is to me.
Yeah.
I would say back in college, I'm going back a few years. When I was in college, intramurals was a big thing, and the football team always had a team in the intramural league, and they had won the national championship that year. I mean, this was probably the best college football team of all time. We're talking 3 deep NFL guys at every position. So we ended up beating the football team to win the intramural championship, and they were loaded. Andre Johnson, you should see that guy play basketball. He could have played in the NBA. Hall of Fame wide receiver. They had all kinds of guys. They had a bunch of first-round picks on that team. Just the size, athletic ability, and strength of these guys was off the charts.
So for the record, people know that Andre Johnson is one of my favorite all-time receivers. I mean, that's just a stud. I mean, he just looks like he could do it all. He
played high school ball at Miami High with one of my best friends, Marcus Barnes, who's also played with us. And Andre's just a freakish athlete. They called him the Freak. That was his nickname at
Say less. That's all that needs to be said. Yeah. London, how about you? Out of the guys you saw that came through your run, or came through the run you guys are normally playing at, who was the best football player out there?
I think I gotta agree with Manny. I think now Jason Taylor, I played with him more than Julius Peppers, and Jason is an athlete, and as you know, because we played, Jason was on our team in the Shaq thing, right? Yep. So he's an athlete, and he's a hell of an athlete, and he's a great teammate as well. But I gotta say Julius Peppers as well. I mean, the guy is just so big. We had some guys. We got some guys that aren't very small. Now, at the time when Julius was there, I don't think Mashburn was there, but we had a guy named Dexter Van Zandt who's a pretty good-sized guy, and can play and is strong. And Julius acted like he wasn't even there. I mean, it was pretty amazing what he was able to do. But he's also a very good teammate too, because he's not a selfish guy. Most of the guys that play, like I said before, they want to win, but we're all out there to enjoy the game. That's why we're there, and Julius was one of those two. So I would say in my opinion, as far as football players that have come through our run, he's been the best.
Yeah. So you know what, we had some good conversation. I know I wanted to segue into our last topic, and that is the return of the NBA. But I have one more follow-up question, because this is some good juicy stuff, some good information. Because again, we're here in the Midwest. And we think, basketball is king. I've actually been up to the Rucker in New York, and I've seen them play. I try to make it out to all the local courts whenever I'm traveling. But I do want to ask you this. What was the best matchup that you saw at your run? Where you guys just kind of backed off and said, okay, we're just going to let these two guys go at it?
Me in London.
You're in London?
Yeah.
I agree with Manny. Him and I probably. There's been times there's been a time when we didn't have any bigs, like, 1 or 2 bigs. We played several games. The bigs retired, and it was all, guys, Manny, and my height, 6'2" and under. And I would yell over to the bigs, you guys better get your high-speed cameras out, because this game's about to go to another level. We don't have any bigs running up and down the court. But,
well, I can tell you right now, if you're in our gym and the game is to 9 or 7, first game might be 11, second game might be 9, depending on how many people are there, which we have strict rules. if you're there at game point and it's Jamal Mashburn versus Ray Allen, or it's we have some other like guys that played overseas and they're matched up with Ray and they're trying to prove that they could have been him. Yeah. And he's just ready to go. And that game point is going to be serious every time. And when you want to talk about guys that come through in the clutch every single time, and you're like, how do they do it every time? Like, do they ever miss the game winner? And they don't. And it's fun to watch that. And there's been some really good ones. Carlos Arroyo versus Ray versus Mash. Back when Timmy was there, Timmy versus anybody for game. I mean, when those game winners are a lot of fun.
Yeah, we've had, to echo what Manny's saying, we've had some of those situations where, you know, you're not in awe throughout the whole game because all of us are wrapped up in the game, especially if we're on the court. But when it gets down to the wire, when it gets down to game point, everybody in the gym, you know, it's kind of like when Jordan was on the floor. Everybody in the gym knows who's going to get the ball. So you do what you can. You try to do what you can to stop it. But, you know, usually you can't do it. And those guys, you know, if you get lucky and they miss that first shot, they better not get another chance because they're not going to miss it the second time.
One of the things that we didn't mention is that we have guys who are really young there as well. So the young guys are really hungry and they go hard at everybody, where like Mashburn might take it easy a lot of the game. He's not Jamal Mashburn you saw play at Kentucky or play in the All-Star game in 1992. You know what I mean? Or actually, no, he was in college in 92. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. You're getting guys who are kind of coasting a little bit, and then game point, they take over. But you take a guy who we haven't mentioned, Jamal Mashburn Jr., who Manny coached in high school. He's going to University of Minnesota. He's 18 years old. I mean, trying to cover that guy for I'm 42, you know. It's a tough matchup. He's a really good basketball player, and he's trying to work on his game, and he's not coasting. He's going hard. So, you know, we also had, I remember, Jawan Howard Jr., and he was on the Heat Summer League team that year. So, I mean, this is a guy who's in his prime. He's trying to make the Heat roster, and he's practicing with us. I mean, he's not giving us any freebies. No. You know, he's going hard. So those are the guys, to me, who are actually the toughest, because a guy like Mash and Ray, they're not trying to show us up. They're not trying to take advantage of the matchup. You know, they're out there chilling. It's those guys, those young, hungry guys. They're tough.
Raj probably went the hardest. Like, Raj probably goes the hardest. Raja Bell. Like he doesn't go out there and like show, like he doesn't like shine like crazy and like score every bucket, but he just goes hard and he'll just put you in the wall and just keep going.
Yeah, Raja Bell seems like he has one gear, and that's competitive. Just I'm coming for your ass.
Yes, he's going.
Exactly why he had a great NBA career is because of that. Yeah. That one year and that chip on his shoulder. He's one of the best podcast guests I ever had. He's a good friend of mine. He's a great guy and has a great basketball savvy.
Yeah, I don't know if we've had anyone in there as fast as John Morant though. We watched him make a Euro step from about one step over half court. He did a Euro step. He was half court to the 3-point line and then at the rim with the next step, and you're like, what just happened? He's in like half sweatpants. He just came to chill, and I'm like, what is going on?
And that's why when I have conversations with a lot of people. You know, I've been blessed to see a lot of basketball across the country because I travel. But when I travel, I try and make it out to just the local areas and talk to people and get a pulse for the basketball world. And I tell people all the time, there is a difference between a professional athlete and a really, really good basketball player. And guys will say, "Oh man, I could have made it to the NBA. I don't even need a number on the back of my." No, bro, no, just stop it. I mean, yeah, you might have those one or two what if stories, but stop it. There is a reason why these guys are professional athletes, and to see them, even a really high level college player versus a professional athlete, there's a huge disparity. There's a huge gap between the two. So, you know, hearing these stories about Jamal Mashburn and Ray Allen, and especially the story about John Morant, who is one of my favorite players that's coming to the league over the past few years. It's eye-popping, you know, to hear these, to get this firsthand information and these stories, because, you know, these are the things that you don't always hear, or they really, the raw and uncut way that you're expressing it, really shed some light on how good these guys really are, especially when they're in a non-controlled environment where they can kind of let go and let their games speak for themselves. Unbelievable.
I just remembered a funny story. Tim Hardaway, who is very competitive, but he can't move like he used to. He has bad knees.
Mm-hmm.
He was covering a younger guy named Felipe, who can play. Do you guys remember this? Felipe was probably like the best player on his team, and Tim was the best player on his team, so they were matched up.
Okay.
But Felipe was probably 30, and Tim was 44 or something. I don't know. And Felipe tried to cross him over for game point, and Tim grabbed Felipe, and Felipe went to the floor because Tim's strong.
Yeah.
And he went to the floor and said, "Don't you ever try to use my move against me." He couldn't stay in front of him, but he could throw him on the ground.
That sounds like Tim.
Yeah.
That sounds like Tim. Actually, back in the day, I don't say back in the day like I'm 100 and some years old, but some time ago I used to run a citywide sports program, and we had some guys donate: Tim Hardaway, Sean Marion, Antoine Walker, and guys like that. But we would go to the pro-am tournaments, and Tim was older then. I think Tim might have just been on the tail end of his career or just retired. But the same thing, he's not gonna let you embarrass him. You will respect the game. You will respect the game, or you're gonna respect the man. One or the other. When it comes to Tim, he doesn't play. And it was the same thing at IIT. With these younger guys, they were always like trying to test him because, again, that's a name. If you say I crossed Tim Hardaway or I crossed Jamal Mashburn or I dunked this, that goes a long way. You might have missed 8 shots in that game, but if you got that one move, hey, I tell people all the time, it's the name, fame, and then the game. You want to make a name for yourself, you want to be famous, and then your game expands after that. But it's the name, fame, and then the game when it comes to basketball. So, well, great, guys. I do want to just touch base real quick, and I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. I enjoy you guys being on the show. I do want to touch base real quick with some thoughts, your thoughts on the return of the NBA. And also, if and when the NBA returns, will there be an asterisk next to this year's champion based off of circumstances due to COVID-19? So I know we're switching gears a little bit. I'm going to start with, let me start with Matt. I'll go Manny, and I'll follow up with London. Your thoughts on the return of the NBA and this year's NBA champion. Will there be an asterisk next to that team's name?
There could very well be. I want to say no, because I'd love to see everybody come out and just play at their top level and have a great tournament, if you will. But there's so many variables, like, is a top player going to catch COVID and have to sit out some big games? Is there going to be a team that gets hit with a COVID bomb and 6 guys on the team have to sit out? Is Greg Popovich, Mike D'Antoni, Alvin Gentry, these are guys 69, 70, 72 years old. Are they going to be allowed to be on the sideline? They're saying they don't even know if they're going to allow them on the sideline right now. There's so many variables. So if these things happen, I mean, I'd like to say that there isn't going to be an asterisk, because whoever wins this, it's going to be a true, battle of attrition to show that you were committed. And, I think the biggest thing in this will be teams can come together and maybe the camaraderie to go to games together, sit in the crowd and watch games together and go golfing together and have that college feel, that college atmosphere. I think that'll be the team that has a lot of success. And my last thing I'll say about it is, if it plays out where the teams that we think are the best teams make it to the finals and make it and win, whether it's the Lakers or the Clippers or the Bucks or, one of the top teams wins, then I think it worked. But if you got a team that ends up winning that nobody expected, it's probably because it's a fluke. It's not because, they're the better team or, that's how I feel.
I'm going to ask you to go out on the limb. If you had to make an OG call, that's the OG
Boston Celtics.
Picking the Celtics. Oh, I forgot. Boston guy.
Boston Celtics are the best basketball team in the history of the NBA. So I would have to defer to the Celtics.
Okay.
I'm not biased.
Okay. Well, let me just say this. Here at Straight No Chaser, we encourage everyone to drink responsibly. He just went on a limb with the Celtics. We encourage everyone to drink responsibly. My man, Matt. Manny, how about you?
So first of all, I mean, the return of the NBA, I think is, you know, as long as everything goes as planned. I know there's all the stuff with Kyrie going on right now in the Players Association, but it's great for our country, I think. I mean, everybody needs something right now. I mean, I think even if you're not a big basketball fan, you're going to become a basketball fan in August, which is going to be great. You know, it's going to be good for the game. And the NBA, no one can handle it better than them. They're gonna do it to the best of their ability, and it's going to be great. As far as the asterisks, I think, like Maddie said, I think it's going to depend on who wins it. I think there's 3 or 4 teams that if they win it, I don't think there'll be an asterisk because they had a legitimate chance going in. I do think, like he said, there's so many variables, but injuries, I think injuries are going to be huge. Maybe just as huge as the COVID, because you got guys that are used to being in top condition, you know, going into that point in the season, and now you're asking them to, because they'll tell you they play at another level in the playoffs. Yeah. So for them to that mentality is, I think you're going to see a lot of tweaks and injuries. Maybe hopefully not major injuries, but guys being out key games. And you know, if a guy like LeBron is out, that guy's never hurt. You know, if he's out for a game 6 and they lose a series on a fluke, you know, then yeah, there might be a little asterisk there. But you know, I think all in all, it's going to be great for everybody in our country just to have something to watch other than like stone throwing on ESPN to Ocho.
No.
And one more thing, I think it'll be interesting to see which guys like sneak outside the bubble to go visit, you know, some import. Because they're going to be finding people for this type of stuff. So who can stay the most disciplined, you know?
Yeah. You know, one of the interesting things that had come up, I'm sorry, before I share that, Manny, who was your pick to win it?
I mean, my pick going into the season and going into this, like I said, without any crazy things happening, would have to be the Lakers.
The Lakers?
Yeah, I thought they were going to win going in. And I'm not a Lakers fan by any means. I'm a LeBron fan. He used to be in Miami, and I coached his kids. So, I mean, I'm a LeBron fan, and I think he's the best player in the league right now. And with them getting Anthony Davis, I don't know that there'll be anybody that could beat them truly in a 7-game series.
So to your point, I'm going to come to London, but to your point, Matt, I think sneaking out of the bubble is a real thing, you know, trying to maintain that discipline, because for some of these guys, they're going to be spending 3 months, you know, with their significant other, not their side piece. So it's going to be a challenge for them to stay focused. Now you're locked in with the family. You know, you got those temptations out there. So,
and I think another piece of that, though, is you have, you know, you're talking about young men that are 25 to, let's say, 30, 32. I mean, back when I was 25, I was invincible in my mind.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that, and I'm sure that probably everybody on this panel would say the same thing. When you were younger, you're invincible. So it's not going to surprise me that guys are going to be sneaking out, because they think they're going to be able to think that they can get away with it. Now, you're right. There's going to be some hefty fines, I think, that they said if these guys do that, because they're going to have to quarantine them for a while, and that means they're going to miss time in games. But, you know, the temptation for them to do that is going to be huge, I think. Yeah. Even though they're bringing a lot of services in for them to make sure they don't have to do that. But
services. Listen, if you're 27 years old and you've been quarantined with your wife or girlfriend for 3 months, and now they're sending you to Orlando to get away from your wife, you don't think they're going to be doing shit to go?
Yeah,
I think they will. Yes, I think they will. I mean, but
you know, come on.
Yeah, I mean, everybody can't be Lou Williams and bring a couple girls with you. Girl Lou, as Matt Barnes likes to call him. 2-girl Lou. You know, everybody can't be Lou Williams. So, hey, God bless him. So, real quick, I appreciate everyone jumping on the call tonight. We've got some good information. I love the story that you guys are sharing about your experiences in basketball, kind of where you came from, how the game has helped you develop and evolve as an individual, what some of the things that you're doing with the game or that the game has provided to you that you're now doing beyond that. And then also the stories that you were able to share about some of the runs and some of the people that you played with and some of the things that you've seen on a non-restricted level. With that, I want to be mindful and respectful of everyone's time. What I like to do is just go around briefly, and if there's anything that you'd like to share with our fans that are watching, any shout outs or anything like that, because we've had people that have tuned in and commented some of the things that you're working on, please feel free to share. So London, anything you'd like to say in closing to our group?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to you, Stan, for having us on. Sharing our story down here in South Florida and sharing the situation that we have with this run that's going on 10 years now it's really a great story. And I've met some wonderful people because of this, including everybody here on this panel. And I just think I can't imagine a better situation, at least not for me at this point. Now, I don't know how many more years I got to play, but I'm going to continue to play for as long as I can. So thanks for having us. And I certainly enjoyed this interaction.
And for the record, people still are in awe that London is close to 60 years old. He's like the Joe Louis of pickup basketball. London was 167 when I dunked. Nobody really knows the age. He's like the Joe Louis of pickup basketball. So keep doing what you're doing, my brother.
I'm going to do that. Thank you.
Matt, how about you? Anything in closing? Please share more information about your podcast. We want to make sure that we're building that up and letting people know that you're out there.
Yeah, check out Keeping It a Hundo, but I haven't really been releasing anything for the reason that I think there's more important stuff going on right now, and I don't really want to be a distraction or make it, I don't want to be advertising my podcast when there's stuff going on that people need to pay attention to. I think if you're a white dude and you support this cause, you need to reach out to people that Black people. There's a lot of white people that aren't exposed to a lot of the stuff that some of us are exposed to. I have a lot of friends and my girlfriend and a lot of Black people in my life. And I ask them, what can I do to show you that I support what's going on right now? Besides protesting, voting, social media. I mean, what else is it that you can do? Because I want them to know that I'm 100% in on this Black Lives Matter. And I think the number one thing that I've been hearing is to educate yourself, is to learn about the systematic oppression, how racism's embedded into our culture in so many aspects, from the Constitution to music, to laws, there's so many ways that it's just, and it's taken for granted. So I just would say educate yourself and make sure that you vote. And I think that a lot of the protesting, a lot of the people, and it's necessary, the protesting, they don't know what they're protesting for. Exactly, like you have to have an agenda and you have to know, what do you want from this? And I think everybody, including Black people, need to know what is it that they want, because you have the ear of the nation right now. You have the whole world watching us right now. What is it that you want to achieve from this? That's all I can.
That's a great point, Matt. And I'm sorry to jump in here.
Oh, go ahead, please.
But Matt, you touched on something that's really important. And for Black people to be treated as equals, we have to have allies that look like you and Manny. We cannot. If Stan and I could have fixed it, it would have been fixed hundreds of years ago. We can't fix it. We need people like you and Manny and other allies. I have some other very good friends of mine that I've been communicating with regularly over the past couple of months, white friends that I have back up in Michigan. And they feel the same way. The same question that you just said, Matt, you want to know what it is you can do to help. They've been asking me that same thing. And I think that where we are today, there's a lot of momentum to make some significant changes in policing policies and things that the systemic oppression that we've had to live under have come to light now. And we need help from people just like you guys. And I would just encourage you to reach out to friends and family members that you have and share that message, because that's the only way it's going to get better. And this is a tough time to be, it's a tough thing that we're all dealing with. I think it affects some of us more than others. I have a 13-year-old son, and my wife and I are sitting with him at the dinner table telling him how to interact with a police officer. Now, Manny, I don't know if you've had those kind of conversations with your children, your young children. Manny's got 2 children right around the same age as my son. And I don't know if you have those conversations, but we, people of color, we know that we have to have those conversations. There's no way that you can raise especially a black male in this society without having those kind of conversations early and often. Because let's face it, the world is different. The world is different for my son than it is for Manny's son. But, you know, we got to do what we can to make it better. And thank you for broaching that subject, Manny, because it's pretty important. Yeah,
absolutely. And to London's point, we call it the talk. I had the talk at 10 years old. So at 10 years old, I was made aware that these are some things that you may encounter, you know, so I was ready to face those, but you're still never ready when it happens. But at least you can start to plant the seed and equip and provide some of those tools in the event that occurs. So great points, both London and Matt. Manny, anything that you'd like to share with our group as we close out?
I'll start on what they were talking about, because obviously that's a hot topic right now, and it's been a problem my whole life. I mean, I'm 42. I never was part of it or recognized it really, because I was in a culture where I was raised. There was no color. We didn't see it. Now, as more things come out, it's worrisome to me. Like Lennon said, I don't maybe have to have that same conversation with my son, but the conversations we're having at our house are, you understand why we don't have to have these conversations, and that's not right. No. You know, we have that conversation, which is equally as uncomfortable to have to explain to your kid that this is why this happened. And, you know, we've been talking about the whole systematic racism and all that. And on this call right now, I know Dimitri Morgan, who I told you guys about, he's in Chicago. You know, he's been watching, and, you know, he's African-American. He's got a white wife and a mixed child. And I know they've been worried about, you know, the time she's young, she's just a little one, and the conversations they're going to have with her, and that they've already started to have. And, you know, you watch some of these stereotypical shows like Mixed-ish and Blackish, and, you know, they're comedies, but, you know, they bring out good points, and they're saying things like, you know, if you're a mixed kid, you have a white mom, black dad, vice versa, you're black. You're looked at as black. So to me, that makes no sense. No, you're half white, you're half black, whatever it is. But in our culture, it's what people see, and that's not right. Obviously, to me, I've never lived like that. But you see people now every day, and social media definitely doesn't make it any better. Social media blows everything up. False news, some real news. Everything is blown up. And all I hope is that with the NBA coming back, our pro athletes have such a big stage, and some of them do such a great job. Yes. with issues of political stature or racism or whatever. And obviously now Colin Kaepernick, you know, going back to what he did and the heat he took, and now, you know, someone's going to put him back on a team, and now he's going to be the hero. But now people are seeing that this is nothing new. But now these athletes can come maybe back onto the media, and other than just a LeBron, you know, all the way down. And like London said, these white players, you know, everybody, you know, coming together for the same cause. And like you said, not all lives can matter until Black Lives Matter. And it's not one without the other. Like you got to have it equal. So it's not an easy task by any means, but all we can hope is that our kids, like my kids, are going to be raised like me. You know, we hope that more people now are raising their kids like that. The ones that are still raising their kids wrong, I think, are the ones we have to be most worried about.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end our segment. Great information, very passionate people about sports, but then also just culture in general. So I appreciate our guests that have been on. London, Manny, Matt. They've joined us from Southeast, from the Florida area. We talked basketball. We talked a little bit of background about each of these individuals. We were able to talk about their thoughts on the upcoming NBA season. And they close us out with some really important information regarding social justice and their thoughts on how we can move forward. So to everyone that tuned in out there, I appreciate everyone that's been on the call. I appreciate everyone that's tuned in. And that's how we do it. We close out another segment of Straight No Chaser. Thank you, everyone, for being on the call.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.